right.
is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh,
Takes a
dead
hop
shank.
off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I would like to welcome four-time All-American from Georgia Tech and PGA Tour winner Bryce Molder to the Sub-70 podcast. I think I can still call you pro. You don't have your amateur status back, so thank you, pro, for coming on and doing this today. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, and thanks for having me on. Yes, you can call me a pro. It doesn't mean I look or act or play like one, but technically still a pro. But yeah, I appreciate the chance to come on.
Would you ever want your amateur status back at some point?
Yes, but the reasons would be to play in just fun four balls and things that don't really matter. Now, when I say that, the problem is I might be competing against some guys that care, and so maybe that's the kind of drop off. I had a chance. I actually, like 2 years ago, I had a former teammate of mine that was. He just came from playing somewhere on the East Coast. I forget where it was, somewhere really cool in a four-ball event. Oh, I think it was like National Golf Links. And then he was going to L.A. to play in one at L.A. Country Club. And I'm like, this is BS. Like, this is what I want to do. And I like went on the USGA website, signed up to get my amateur status back. And then like 2 weeks later, a pal, Roberto Castro, goes, dude, you're never getting that back. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, play this out. 3, 4, 5 years from now, you show up at the U.S. Amateur four ball or the U.S. Amateur, U.S. Mid Amateur, and you spent 11, 12 years on tour with a tour win, and now you're playing against guys that like work for a living. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And he goes, yeah, but they don't know that, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And I completely so I withdrew it. And now, my version of that is to play in some fun, like pro scratches. And I'm like, I laugh. I'm like, yeah, I'm probably a little too good to play as an amateur. I'm not good enough to play as a pro. But I have a good time doing it now. And I don't really I've got a lot shorter memory now when I play and compete and stuff, which is much better, much more fun.
The cocktail tour does sound fun, though, doesn't it? I mean, some of those venues, that's the best.
Well, you get the venue in somewhat of a like heightened, like you're going to post a score, so you kind of get the nerves going. But nobody's really going to see if you just play like complete crap. So you get all the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. And yeah, you have more fun at night, and you probably have a little more fun while you're out there doing it. So it does sound like a lot of fun, but that's okay. That's for a certain people, and unfortunately, I'm not in that group. But maybe give it a few more years, and people will completely forget that I ever played professional golf, and I can just kind of slide under the radar.
Is Roberto trying to get his amateur status back, or is he still trying to play when he can?
I think he's still playing a little bit. I think, when he can. But although I even think there's been some, when he's kind of moving and shifting into a different career, there's that. You want to show someone that you're potentially going to work with or work for, that you're serious about that. But yet, part of what you bring to the table is, hey, this is a professional golfer that could still play in some tournaments. And so, so there's probably a little bit of, lingering that, but that's the hard part, is actually just, cutting the line for sure and kind of moving to the other side. But then there's other times when you just, it kind of cuts it for you. And you realize that, your chances of playing really, really good are probably gone. And so it kind of helps you cut the line.
What's your handicap now at Whisper, like +3, +4, somewhere in there?
It is. It kind of depends. It just dropped into I was in the +4s, and now it dropped into the +3s, which I'm much more comfortable. It's kind of in that range. It's in that range. I try to keep a handicap. I try to post all my scores just so that, if you ask me to play in a member guest, and I'll play in any net division, right? And it's kind of like, at least your pro or your whatever could be like, well, no, he's got a handicap and he's just going to play to it. And by the way, I'm not going to win in any flight with my handicap, I'm going to finish about third. Like, I'm going to
Right.
probably shoot my handicap, and there's going to be other guys getting shots that outplay their handicap. I'm not going to outplay my handicap because I'm just, and so, but I, so for that reason, I do keep a handicap.
Yeah, and as you well know, more than anybody, right? Like when you're on tour, your handicap's +6, +7, +3, +4. Like when you said you're kind of in no man's land, it really is true, right? Like you're not a 0 or a 1, but you're not at a +6, +7 anymore, which those you were at one time.
It's so funny. I had a guy at a member guest, and actually I'd won it 2 years in a row, and it was because I was playing with partners that were like, a 10 handicap that one of the days shot like 76. Like it wasn't because of me.
Right.
And we go back, and my handicap was kind of like a +3.6 or something. And a guy approached me, and he goes, +3.6, really? And I'm like, are you saying
right.
in a good way or a bad way? Like what he was like, I mean, you're a pro. Like, aren't you like a +6? And I'm like, well, I was, yes. I'm like, but on any given day, I'm somewhere between a 0 and a +6. I'm a +3 point something. And by the way, we finished dead last in our flight, and it was actually comical. But I wanted to be like, no, like if I don't play well, I don't just kind of scrape it around at a club level for like 67 anymore. It's like, no, I'll make some bogeys. I'll hit a ball out of play. I'll, chunk a chip or miss a short putt. Like so that stuff does happen now. So, and then the other problem is every once in a while you put it together and you're like, oh yeah, I remember how to ride a bike. And you look like you just came off tour, and then the next day you fall off the bike and you're like, no, it's nowhere close.
Yeah, and it sounds like, +3, +4, you're a great player, but there is when you're playing competitive on the PGA Tour, even Korn Ferry Tour, and that's your whole life. Like everything revolves around that, the practice, the mental focus, all of it. There is such a huge divide between that and where you're at. Like it's night and day. It's
if I went out to, my club or whatever, any golf course on a Tuesday, a Friday, a whatever, not an event, and I played with a touring pro, if I played well that day, I'd probably be able to like kind of compete. And if I didn't, I'd get just smoked. Now, so the difference might be somewhere in that 2, 3, 4 shots range on average. And then like, if you turn the lights on and you make me play in front of somebody, like some people and some cameras, and post a score, like I have no idea. I am petrified of what I would shoot today. I can't even remember like when I watch TV now, I'm like, man, that looks really hard. How do those guys do that? Like, how do you, I've got kind of sweaty palms right now watching, because I remember what that feels like, but now I don't have the game to back it up. So it's even like your memory of it is even tougher. And so, the divide is really big. Somebody said like a couple of years ago, they're like, why don't you go try to qualify for this Open? I'm like, because I might make it. And then I would shoot, and then I'd shoot 100, like, and so that's and I'm like, and I'm in that spot where I'm like, the more, if I actually try to go practice for a couple of days or for a few hours, I'll get worse. So I'm better off just like not practicing. I just go and play for fun, no expectation. As soon as I put like an ounce of expectation, it goes bad. And so, there's a massive divide between kind of, where I was and where the game is now. There's a divide there, but there's also a divide from, where I was and where I am now. So it seems like a different sport now watching.
Yeah, and also too, like, your course is set up kind of for the members. Ours is as well. Like, you don't realize that. Well, if you know golf, you can realize it. But go play the John Deere Classic, right? And look how that golf course is set up most of the year. Then when the tour is in, and you guys were still shooting 20-some under par, relatively speaking, it's set up pretty hard. Rough is thick, fairways fast, greens rolling. The course conditions aren't even the same as they normally are. So then you have to factor that in, right? Of like, even on a Korn Ferry Tour event, it's made for touring pros.
It is, and the rough is real. There's just more to it. I mean, you are playing off the back part of the back box. But it's kind of like, if the greens are soft and the weather's pretty good, like you can't make a course tough enough other than greens being firm and fast. You kind of can't, if the greens are soft and the weather's pretty good, the guys are going to shoot really low. And that's not because the courses are very easy. It's because they're just really good. And that's okay. Like in my mind, I'm like, that's okay. As long as the best players playing that day shoot the lower scores, and that's really all you can really kind of try to do. But it is, the whole, what would a 10 handicap shoot, at a U.S. Open during those conditions? It's like, I don't know. I mean, it would be ugly. I don't want to have that conversation because it sounds like it's degrading. They'd
have no chance. They'd have no chance. I mean, a 2 handicap couldn't. I don't think I could break. 90?
Go to the, wherever you go play basketball or rec, center or whatever. And it's like, oh, that guy's a pretty good athlete. Like he can play some ball, and then you're like, no, go put him in the NBA and see how ridiculously, short, slow, unathletic, uncoordinated he looks compared to the most elite kind of, athletes of that sport. And I'm not comparing, professional golfers as complete as those types of athletes, but there's just such a massive difference. And then when you actually put it on that stage, it gets even bigger. But they're also conditioned for it. I was sitting in front of some people in more kind of a work setting, but it was also some golf related questions. And somebody said, how do you watch guys on TV and it means the world. They're playing for a lot of money. They're playing for prizes. They're playing for trophies. And the world's watching. How do they do that? Or how do you do that? And I was like, you really can only be conditioned for it. Like there's no way to practice for that kind of pressure. There's no way to practice for the fact that I remember the first time I played the U.S. Open, I was still in college, qualified for the U.S. Open in Pinehurst in '99 when Payne Stewart won. And it was the first time I remember teeing a ball up and my hands were shaking enough to where that was difficult. And then to be over the ball and the club head shaking. And I just was like, I don't know if I'm going to hit the ball. Like I've never felt that before. I've felt nerves before, but I've never actually been scared that like every person in the gallery right now is in play. Like this thing could go anywhere. And then I hit it, and it didn't go in the fairway, but I hit it solid. And I just remember going, oh, okay, that's what, muscle memory, even though that may not be the right term, but like that's what, okay. Yeah. So you've done it a million times, like just, and so, but that's how, when you watch guys play, and it's like, well, they're conditioned for that. And every part of their professional life right now is geared toward that moment. And so everything else is just so that you get to that moment. And so, but if you just put a random amateur,
oh gosh, yeah.
So this was and maybe this is like good, question for you, or like sitting around a table. It's like, okay, if I put you said you're a 2 handicap.
Yeah, with no practice. And I mean, like I'm like you. I work a gazillion hours, and yeah. So I'm a good 2, and put nothing into it to be a 2. So I can play a little bit, but
so interesting question would be, all right, how big of a lead if we just transported you right now and said, okay, you're going to be on the tee Sunday at the Masters, the world's watching, how big of a lead do you need to win? And it's really fun with like kind of, and I've got a buddy that's like a 10 handicap, and he's kind of got some yips with it's like anywhere around the green. And it was funny because we were like playing it out, right? And it's like, well, I'm going to make 8 or 9 on the first for sure. So and we were kind of working our way back, but it was just funny because it's like when you put in that heightened environment, how crazy things could go, right? But but again, I go back and I watch TV now, or I watch some golf now, and when I watch it, I'm just like, gosh, I don't know how I did that. That was actually, it looks really hard, and feels like it'd be really hard to go back and try to do it again.
Do you miss it? Do you miss having the pressure on a Sunday or all of it, and fans watching and signing autographs? I mean, like, is there still part of that where it's like, God damn, that was fun?
The response I give to that is very quickly, I miss being really good. And there was a point in my life, in my career, where I felt like if I play great, I don't know if anybody's going to beat me. And I don't know if I ever really felt like that at the professional level, even though I felt like that was a potential. I was headed in that direction. It was on that kind of path. But like back in kind of amateur college, early on professional life, I remember thinking and feeling that. And so that I miss. But the rest of it, I just don't. It's hard to replace the feeling, in the corporate or investment, or in my life, commercial real estate world. It's hard to replace that feeling 2, 3, 4 times a year, even in the last 5 years of my career, where I competed and I got a lot out of the tournament and finished second or 10th or, sometimes 20th. And you're like, no, but I had nothing that week. And I grinded out a score, made some money, needed to do this to keep my card, whatever it was. And those little feelings that you get from really accomplishing something that is really hard, that's hard to recreate in a different setting, just because it's such a heightened kind of world. But they're so futile, there's so few and far between that I'm okay giving that up for the other 200 days out there playing and feeling disappointed and that part of it that I just, got to where I'm like, you know what, I really don't like what I do anymore. So that part of it I don't like, but I do miss, feeling like at any moment I could just pass the field and win by whatever. Like there was a moment in time where I felt that way, and that was pretty cool, and that I miss.
Then on the flip side, is it hard, and I'm just going to use you as a brand, being Bryce Molder, and then knowing I might shoot a 75 today and play with amateur golfers and not have my best stuff? Because some guys just don't play anymore, right? Once they retire, they're just, I can't deal with being half-assing this, right? And then is it hard, as competitive, as great as you were, how did you get yourself to that point where you're like, look, man, it might be a 66 or literally it could be a 75, and you're okay with a 75 and still have fun with it where you're not just, effing miserable out there? Like, how do you turn that? Because you guys all have that competitive switch. You don't get to where you're at without that drive, right? How'd you turn that off to enjoy it again?
I think it was just the expectation. Once the expectation is gone, and I think once, there's fulfillment in other parts of your life, that I don't need to play well to feel some fulfillment. It's fun, and I get frustrated sometimes, but it's really short-lived, and it's more frustrating. Like, come on, I can't possibly be this bad, And then 2 holes later, I'm already over it, and I'm laughing, and you know what I mean. So
yeah,
and I'm really lucky too. And I don't know if it's just maybe I stepped away quickly enough that I didn't have much leftover baggage, and I think I didn't pick up clubs for kind of the first 6 weeks after playing in my last event. And then I played, and I'm like, this is fun, and I'm like, what am I, like, this is just going to be a part of my life. And then once I had other parts of my life that, like I said, were fulfilling, and then all of a sudden the golf was just more of, that's something I do now, and it's not who I am. And so that, I think, was like the biggest change. But believe me, like playing a club tournament, and all my buddies, and so many of them played at some level professionally. And believe me, you go play well and you're peacocking around and it feels great. And then the other fun part is when you just play terrible and you can just laugh about it. And if you can get to that spot, then you're going to be able to have fun no matter, what the day looks like. And so that's, fortunately, I'm in that spot. So my relationship with the game is really in a pretty good spot. There's been a few times where I started to care. And should I sign up for Club Championship? I'm afraid that if I start to care, I'm going to lose this great relationship that I have with the game. But I was able to kind of get through that, and I didn't care enough to hate it, So I was able to do that. But I literally, there's some thought process behind it. Hey, I've got a really good relationship with the game of golf again, and I don't want to lose that, because it's still a part of what I do and who I am, or it's what I like to do still. And so I don't want to lose that part of it.
Yeah, and I can imagine if you missed the cut at the Sanderson this weekend in a fall series, there's probably like life choices where you're just like trunk slamming it on Friday and your weekend is ruined, right? And you're thinking, what the F am I doing out here? And how can I be this bad to miss the right? And then all of a sudden your self-worth is how your golf game is. And that's really hard because as cruel as golf is at the professional level, as hard as it is, it could be a slippery slope where that is your self-worth. I've never played professionally, but I can imagine how that could turn into a real shit show.
It does really quickly, and self-worth is the right word. I mean, I laugh. I'm like, no, you play really good on Thursday. You shoot 67, birdie the last two. You know, you feel, you know, you're 6'5" and walking around barrel chested. You know, you're a good husband. You're a good father. You're a good person. And then the next day you shoot, you know, you bogey 2 of the last 3 to miss the cut by a shot. Now all of a sudden you're a bad father, bad husband.
Yeah.
You know, you're 5 feet tall. You're slumped over. Like the world is, you know, it's cloudy out even when it's not. Like it's you just live through that. And I laugh now because I'm like, it's so ridiculous, but you can't. It does mean so much to you. So and the problem with golf is, in most other sports, you know, you have a team aspect, so you can always kind of deflect a little bit of that. And in a team sport, at least, you know, in any given game or match, 50% of people are going to walk away a winner. And in golf, it's less than 1% walks away a winner that week. I mean, you might have a handful that feel like they kind of won in some respect that week, but it's not many. And so that part of it's tough. But there's also that aspect of like there's a number tied to your like self-worth that day, you know, whereas in most business settings there's not really a specific number tied to, oh, well, +5. You're a terrible human being. You have to walk around this big golf course with that number, you know, and then the other side is sometimes you're really proud of it, right? And you got late in the tournament and you got +12 or -12 next to your name in red, and it's like, yeah, look at me. But then the flip side is the opposite, right? When you feel, you know, 2 feet tall and want to crawl in a hole, and that roller coaster part of it, I don't miss at all.
And it is a roller coaster because it can happen in the same round of golf, right? Like
it's so funny. It's like amateurs. I love the pro-ams because you get these conversations, and sometimes they you know, and I was asked a few times, you know, it's like, gosh, you guys just always, you know, have it together. Like, how do you do that? And I'm like, you have no idea how much of a shit show we all are inside, right? And maybe there's 5 or 10 guys out there that are just so uber confident they never really have to live through this. But I'm like, most of the guys out here at some point in time this year are going to be like waking up in night terrors over certain shots or nervous about, like, dreading certain shots that they know that they can't perform. And I'm like, and it changes so fast. Just like you said, I remember being in San Antonio and this is kind of a granular, like, specific story because it really is, like, it still hits me. I remember this, where I just was starting to turn a corner, just starting to play pretty well. And I'm in like 20th place or so. And I remember even who I was playing with. I was playing with Kevin Chappell, who's a buddy, and I've got it all. I'm starting to drive it good. Irons feel pretty good. You know, putting it, like, starting to make some putts. I'm like, man, this is like Sunday, and we're in like, maybe we're in like 30th place or 40th place. No chance of winning, but just kind of like, you know what, next week, like, I am primed. And all of a sudden I hit like a foul ball off the tee on number 4. I chipped out, and then I hit it to like 6 feet and 3-putted. And I missed a putt so short. And I only missed it, I think, because I didn't really concentrate, but it still is in, like, you still feel that. And I remember then walking the next tee and I'm like, I don't even know where I am anymore. Like, I may need to take next week off. Like, I've got to figure this. Like, all of a sudden I'm like, I don't know how to hit a fairway now. And now I don't know what's going on with the putter. And it literally happened that quickly. And it's so, you know, and those are the things that happen. And then it can also switch the other way where you feel one thing. I remember feeling something in Korn Ferry event. It would have been the Nationwide or Web.com or whatever it was back then. But feeling something on like the 16th hole, and with a tee shot, and then all of a sudden knocked on the green on par 5. I'm like, ooh, okay, that feels interesting. And then 17, 18 hit pretty good. And the next week finished like 10th, and then won the following week. And it was like, oh my God, like it can change that fast. And then, by the way, I think the next week was Tour Championship. I finished almost last and wanted to quit. So it was like, that's just
there's your ride, right? 3 weeks of greatness to horrible to greatness to horrible.
Like literally, you're going, bring me Tiger, and then the next one you're like, I wonder about insurance. That sounds like a good career, So it's that part of it is real, and you don't see it because you get good at hiding that. But there's guys going through that stuff, and it's now it's not funny to watch, but it's funny just knowing that I've lived through it, and can kind of see it at times where you see a guy and you're like, oh, he's about to lose it. So it's now being just a viewer, and just a consumer of the sport. It's a funny way to watch it now.
Yeah, there's few guys who own it, right? Like most of the time they're streaky. Like I look at like DJ, and it's like, that guy might just be the most absolute genius ever at some level where it's just, I don't know, man. I just roll out of bed. Like even the way he answers the questions, it's just great. Like you don't hit hooks, right? Basically, no. Next question. Well, what do you do if the pin's on the left of the green? Aim farther left.
Mean,
it's just genius.
He is so talented and so like, it is crazy the amount of work that I had to put in. And I was like a grinder. I'd kind of play my misses. I was kind of one of the few guys left over that just didn't really like compress a ball. I could score really well and really good at not making bogeys, but there was not a whole lot of offense, right? So I remember like one of the last years being on the range. It wasn't Quail Hollow. It was when we played in Wilmington. I can't remember the name of maybe it was Wilmington Country. Really good golf course over in Wilmington when we had, because I think the PGA was going there. And it was a really windy Friday. And I mean, the on the practice tee, it was a dead left to right wind blowing like 25. And I'm just hitting these balls that, I mean, they get airborne and it's just sheer right. Like it's just the wind. It's like the ball is made out of paper, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how to hook a ball in the wind. And then I'm just like, whatever. There's only a few 3 or 4 shots out there where I have this wind direction that's the other way. And I'm hitting balls next to DJ. And there's this sign at the end of the range on the back of the back tee. And it's whatever it is, 310, 320. And I can't sniff getting there, much less aim at it. And he's hitting these ropes that are one hopping off of that, and he's having a conversation while he's doing it as if he doesn't even care. And yet I'm watching his ball, and I'm like, it's like the wind's not blowing where his ball is. Like he's hitting it so hard, and I don't know if it's spinning so like it's just not even
so
touching
solid.
it.
It just penetrates through the wind,
and,
right? It's
and
just...
as soon as mine gets airborne, it just starts diving right, And I'm like, how in the world do I beat that? And like we're not even playing with. Like, I am literally showing up to a gunfight with a knife. Like, this is not fair. And I actually remember I ended up making a few somehow making the cut that week. And I'm like, this is like, it's more impressive what I'm doing out here than whoever's leading right now. Cause I have no business playing on the weekend with what I had that week. But you brought him up, and I never forget that. Cause I'm like, that is just not fair. And I played with him when he drove it well. And I'm like, that's just, like golf is easy from there. Like it's just not even the same game from 330, 340 in the middle of the fairway. Like, and you have the confidence to pull out driver when it might not be the play. And I'm like, that's just not fair. From a lot of levels, that's not fair.
Yeah, no, and he's like the mental side of it. That I always go back to that U.S. Open penalty, bullshit thing, and the way he handled that. Like I would have gone. Postal probably said, I'm not playing until we resolve this. And he just kind of was like, okay.
Yeah.
And just walloped the ball coming in. Like it didn't even affect him.
It is amazing. And I don't know him personally. So I don't know if there's actually some underlying work being done mentally with like if there's some thought to it, or hey, I've read these books, but I'm speculating that that's not the case. But I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that his skill set from a mental standpoint has somewhat been learned and worked on. But you almost can't be that good at anything physically or mentally without it just being ingrained. And there's Phil Mickelson. Played with him, a number of times and know him a little bit. We had the same agent or same agency group since I turned pro. And so, and he's another one that like just weirdly confident. That's just not fair. There's nobody that's hit more poor shots in golf over the last 10 years than Phil, yet he still really, truly believes that if he figures a little something out, that he can be the best player in the world for the next 5 years. And it's just like, it's amazing, right? That's a skill set in itself. Is that kind of like mental capacity or confidence, or the ability, like you said, for DJ just to kind of be like, all right, well, it's just one shot. In his mind, he's probably like, well, I was going to win by 5, now I'll win by 4. Okay, well, whatever.
So I remember his next tee shot, he just pounded it. It's just like he was just like dealt with it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
perfect. Like I couldn't. I mean, I give him all the credit.
I
would
would
have been a
folded
wreck.
up.
Yeah,
I would have folded up so fast. Yeah, it would.
I just think of guys like
so
owning their game. It just seems like he can just sort of. I know you guys all work hard and you're out there, and he works hard. But it's just like when he gets to that first tee, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of self-doubt of how well he's going to hit it that day, and he's pretty goddamn good. Year in, year out, week in, week out.
And there's some confidence there too when you don't feel like it's your last chance or your only chance. To where when you've got that kind of confidence, it's not like, boy, I better take advantage of this opportunity. I may not get it again. I'm guessing that he kind of views it more as, I mean, I'm going to either win or lose, but I'll probably be here next year, and have a chance. So, we'll see, and so it's a little bit different than a lot of guys that get on that stage and they're kind of like, well, this may be my shot.
Right.
And that's, it's kind of a different spot to come from.
So I'm going to ask you about Whisper Rock a little bit. It's just such a cool club with all of the high level play of, the professionals out there, even the really good amateurs. Like it's like the hardest club championship, out there to win. Rumor has it that the great Colt Knost lets you play golf with him every now and then. And I mean, you have to feel so fortunate to be able to spend time with, his greatness. It is, I mean, wow. That still has to be very intimidating.
I can absolutely tell you there is nothing great about Colt Knost anymore.
He's good at broadcasting.
You know what? I was actually going to catch myself. He's doing a very nice job, and I've told him that. And I said, by the way, if you tell anyone that I ever gave you this type of compliment, I will retract it. I will deny it. But I was like, you're doing a really nice job, and I'm glad to see he's rising. But from a golf standpoint, I've played with him recently, and there is nothing great about it. Now, he could say the same about me, and it would be true. But I think the last time we played, he expected to get 3 shots from me.
3?
3.
That seems like a lot.
3 is a lot, right? So I think he got 1, and he bitched the entire time. And I think the funniest part was the 2 shots he would have gotten would have completely flipped the bet, which was just hysterical because he was whining so bad, which I would have too. But it was great. So yes, we get out there every once in a while now. We're kind of coming into season now for Scottsdale golf, and so I'm sure we'll get out there a few times. And it's bad because it's the group that I play with, the group, maybe there's 10, 15, 20 guys that end up kind of playing most of my golf with. And it's a group that just can't wait for you to hit your first really bad shot. And then it's just pile on. And so there's actually some nerves with that where you're just like, man, okay, I can't be the first to hit just a really bad one because then it's just going to start and it's never going to stop. And so it's certainly a crew. And with Colt, you want to get up early because he'll get, I wouldn't say quiet. He's never quiet, but he'll be less talkative. But it's, we have some fun out there. And fortunately there's some good golf to be played, but there's actually some fun golf. And that's, if there's one, great thing about the club, I think there's more than one great thing about the club, but I think they figured out the fun golf aspect of it first, and the good golf and the good setting and vibe and everything followed. So I'm lucky to have that spot.
Well, can't you just feed him a couple cocktails and then convince him that the bet is solid from his side? I mean, that would be a strategy as well, right?
Well, he probably, he beat me to the cocktails. I didn't need to feed him any of those.
Okay.
And he, but no, he's one of those guys, like every other tour player, that if the game's not stacked in their direction, they're going to whine about it. And by the way, I'll raise my hand. I'm one of those guys. I think the handicap system is flawed, and it's only gotten worse. And the last thing I ever want is a fair bet on the first tee.
No,
right?
No.
You don't.
No,
fair bet.
Club
means
Pro
you
guy
lose.
told us that. Yeah, you negotiate that out in the parking lot. You have some
Right.
ailments, some problems, and of course not. I'll come up with every excuse I can. I'm falling apart. I'm old, slightly confused.
It's to the point where it's kind of like, hey, you guys are next up, and it's like, all right, we better hurry over there because it's going to take us 5 minutes to figure out the shots and the bet and what. Like, we need to get over there now because let's just go ahead and get this started because it's gonna start. But that's the fun part about golf now is because at the end of the day, none of that really matters. It's more of just the fun of the negotiation is half the battle, and it's fun. So, and I think the last time I played with like Ches Reavie, and I've played a lot with him over the years. We haven't played as much the last couple of years, but is I knew he thought I was terrible when he didn't even negotiate giving me a shot or not. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm like, wow, he's giving me a shot, which means he thinks I need like 4. Because he's as tight as it gets when it comes to giving shots. And he's the same way. He's the same way I am or was, like, as far as, no, you don't want a fair bet. You want to know that you can play average and win. And I remember him giving me a shot. And it was the first time that it was like, wow, okay, he thinks I'm shitty. Okay. All right, that's where we are now. That's where we are. And then I get on the 1-stroke hole and I hit it down the middle, and I was like weirdly nervous, not sure what to do, trying to make a net birdie. And I hit like the ugliest 7-iron and then a sloppy chip and didn't even come close to making like a 10-footer for par. And I was like, okay, I don't want another shot until I get like 3. Because that was the worst experience I can imagine in golf right now, is getting one shot, and on the 1-stroke hole I get it, I just sloppily make. But I'm like, I'd rather just lose the hole,
just pissed it away, right?
Just pissed it away. And I'm guessing now, if we stepped up there and I said, Ches, you're giving me 3, he would. I think he would try to negotiate down to 2, but I think he'd end up giving it to me. But that's where we are now. That's life. You just got to own up to it.
Or just say you're shitty and use it to your advantage and go beat
Yeah,
them. That can happen too, right? I mean, just play.
Try.
Try. Look like your ailments are in full view.
Yeah. You start with some. You start with a few of the excuses early.
Right.
Back's hurt. I haven't practiced. Been in the office a lot.
There you go.
You get used to it. Yeah.
Your workout schedule's been shitty. His hasn't. Right.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things you can go with. Another character down there. I'm assuming he's down there quite a bit. What's your best McCord story of just having that dude around your club?
First of all, he never wants to leave. And we found out that it's because his wife is as annoyed with him as we are. So he's just always around. He's always wanting to tell you what he's learned recently. He's always trying different putting techniques. I think he's still trying to figure out some technique where he could putt decent. At one point he was putting, and this was before anchoring was a thing, but he was anchoring it to his chin And it was hysterical because it was the only moment during the round when it was quiet. It was like the only time he couldn't talk, and it was like, oh, this is the best 10 seconds of all day. But he's great. I remember playing with him when I was really struggling, and playing with Peter Costas, and I think Paul Casey, who was working with Peter at the time. I was working with Peter, and I was in one of my low points, and Gary jumps on because he's just going to have some fun with it. And it was like after the fourth or fifth ball in the desert, he stopped saying anything, and I'm like, that's the moment when it's really bad. It's when guys feel sorry for you. It's that moment where, ooh, no, never mind. I'm not gonna. I feel like this is over the line to say anything. And we got to that spot during that round, and I called him out for it later. I'm like, by the way, do not ever stop talking, because that's really embarrassing. And he just laughed. He goes, I've been there before. He goes, okay, just good to know. I can keep at it. I said, yes, please keep at it. If you see me like that again, pile on even more, because otherwise it's just gonna make me feel worse.
I think he'd be so much fun to play with. I mean, the stories have to be great. I mean, he's seen it all. I mean, he knows everybody. He's
got a story about everything. And frankly, I think part of what made him so good at his job was that he really was being himself. It may have been a PG version of. I mean, he's not R-rated character by any stretch, but he was just being him. And so when you play with him or you sit down and you talk, you're like, oh, this is the character that I heard on TV for all these years. And that's what I think most people that are really good in TV and radio and whatever, they're just being themselves. I think comedians that are really funny, they're really just trying to make themselves laugh. And if it's funny to other people, then it's genuine. And then you can keep coming up with material. But if it's a sideshow to try to make somebody else laugh or try to make to entertain someone else, then it's never that genuine, never really does much. But I think that's why he was so good for so long, was he was just kind of being Gary, and he didn't really know any other way.
I love it. He's 70-some years old and still, air quotes, trying to find it out there. Still searching, right? It's next week. I'm going to have this thing all figured out, right? He's still out there grinding.
Exactly right.
I love it, that he's still out there all the time. And like I said, someone has to keep him. They can't send him home, so he's your guys' responsibility at this point.
That's right.
So
that is right. That's exactly right.
Someone's got to help him out. I was going to ask you, too, about your, everyone knows about your storied career at Georgia Tech, amazing amateur run. The question I was going to ask is, how much better did you get in college because of the guys that you kind of play? I mean, Cooch was on the team, right? Wybring. Was Troy Madison there as well?
Yeah.
I mean, you had some guys who, you're talking studs on tour. How did that level of competition shape your game and the influence to kind of, I mean, I imagine you guys pushed each other, right? You didn't want to lose to Madison, and Wybring didn't want to lose to you, and, you got Cooch there, USAM champion. What was that environment like?
It was great. I mean, you can't discount what everyday competition can do for you, whether it's having a wedge contest with or putting and chipping contest with somebody, the little things when you're practicing, but then just even qualifying, right? As and we were really lucky at Georgia Tech. We played at East Lake and played at Golf Club of Georgia, which were really good, tough tests of golf, and so you weren't only competing on a tough but fair field, but you were also competing against some of the best players in college on a weekly basis. And so that's that aspect. And then Coach Epler, who's still there now, believes in internal competition and believes in, hey, you've got to earn a spot. That's what I promise everybody. I promise everybody the fact that nobody's promised a spot. And so come and earn it. And so that in itself just breeds what you have to face later, which is every day is a competition. Every day you have to achieve something and post a score, whether it's to try to Monday qualify, whether it's to try to pre-qualify for the Monday qualifier, or make the cut, or finish top 10, or try to do something. No matter what you're doing, you're always up against it, even though you get your tour card, you're not up against anything. Yeah, you are. You're up against something, getting into a major, getting on a Ryder Cup team. It's it prepares you for that. And then to have great competition around you is because you can't fall asleep. And by the way, I couldn't go out and shoot 74 and Cooch shoot 67 and not hear about it.
Right.
So you know what I mean? Where there was no like, oh, whatever. It's just it's just a qualifier. It's just a practice. It's like, no, we all knew we cared. And so you were going to absolutely do what you could. You wanted to win, and it was great. And I don't think every environment has that. We just happened to have a unique group that we were good. We liked each other, but we liked to beat each other almost as much as we liked each other. Like it was perfect. And so I think that breeds you get used to just competing, and it's just, you don't know anything else.
When you turned pro, you played quite a bit in the Korn Ferry Tour, and then you got, obviously, the PGA Tour and one out there. Between playing both of those tours, what's the biggest difference you saw, at least from your era, from going from Korn Ferry to the PGA Tour?
Courtesy cars.
It is nice. Better hotels, better food.
A zero, I was always like, it's an extra zero, and it's a courtesy car. And I'm like, the fact that somebody picks you up, and takes you to the golf course to get your car, or sometimes you sign it out and you get it right then and there. And then when you pull up at, Houston Intercontinental Bush Airport, like you pull up to the curb and there's somebody from the tournament standing there waiting to jump in your car. And it is ridiculous how much better that is than schlepping your bags and your clubs in the courtesy van, and then you got to go wait in this line, and then you rent the car, and then you find out they don't have your car. And like that was, I'm serious when I say that was like the biggest and best difference. And then the players are much better, but I mean, not that much better, right? But it wasn't the courses. Obviously the money was a big difference, obviously. But it was literally just those little things that just made life a little easier. And I mean, I sound really spoiled saying that, but it's absolutely true.
Is that first year tough out there because you are playing against guys who have played those golf courses for years and you are slightly behind that learning curve a little bit? Is that still the toughest one out there of like, okay, keep my card out here and I have to go up against guys who have been doing this for a long time, on the big circuit?
I don't think that's as big of a deal as you kind of start. You almost start. It's like having a 100-yard dash and you're starting 5 yards behind, just because you're going to be in the lower tier events and you have to play your way into the upper tier events. So you actually need to play well early just to get to the spot that everybody else is starting from. And when I say lower tier, it's more of, well, how many FedEx points and how much money? And when I started, it was how much money. It's like, well, if that person's $3 million and next week they're playing for $7 million and I'm not in that tournament, well, I'm starting way behind, right? So, and now even with the FedEx, there's heightened events, and then there's lower tier events, and it's kind of like if your average event, you're getting X number of points allocated towards those, and you're competing against guys that are getting, say, 25% more on average because they're playing in higher events and not playing in lower events. That's a difference, and so you kind of have to overplay to get on tour, then overplay. I don't even know if that makes sense, but you have to play better to get on tour than you have to play when you're on tour to stay on tour. If that makes sense. But it does make sense. And there are some courses where, yes, I mean, you get to where you know where the holes are going to be, you know certain things, you know certain stuff. But I don't know. I was always more of like, if I'm playing well, it kind of doesn't matter where. I'm going to shoot a good score, and if I'm playing poorly, it doesn't matter where and how much I know the golf course. I'm not going to play well. It was kind of that simple. So I think it's more of just the way that the tour is structured. And by the way, that's the only way to structure it. You got to, you got to earn your way up there. And then when you're up there, it's, you got to earn your way to stay, but it's not as hard to stay.
We talked about this a little bit earlier of, kind of retiring relatively for a golfer young after some real success. I mean, I looked, that's a solid 10 years you had out there, and it was good. You had a victory, a lot of solid finishes. We kind of talked about what went into retiring from the PGA Tour. And then like I said, we've gotten to that a little bit, but then I'm very interested in how did that transition into a business career? How much do you truly enjoy it? I'm guessing a lot. Like, you've been successful at what you're doing. And what's your role at Trident Capital Partners? And, kind of explain to the listeners what your firm does and what your role is there and how that whole transition kind of started from professional golf to the business world and, what you're kind of doing with it today.
So if you go back to kind of 2017, I was kind of at the end of my rope. I'd spent a couple years knowing that, hey, my style of golf and my the assets I had to play at a high level were just not as important. I was great at putting and scoring, and it was more about offense. And so I kind of took some chances in, hey, I'm gonna work, try to change my golf swing, work on some things to be able to hit it to a level literally that I could actually play at a really high level. And if it doesn't work out, it may go the wrong direction, which it did, but it was worth that because I was on my way out anyway.
So did you find a teacher that you wanted to work with? I mean to cut you off there, but did you say, okay, we're going to go work with Costas and break it down if you need to, Peter? Let's do this.
I bounced around a little bit. I had Mike LeBeau was my teacher in 2008, 2009 that helped me get on tour and helped me stay on tour. And we kind of hit a ceiling. And maybe that was just my ceiling, at that time, and especially with where the game was going. But I said, hey, I've kind of gotten all the information I think I can from you. We've kind of hit a ceiling. I'm going to kind of go see if there's something else out there that helps me get to the next level. And I bounced around a little bit, and I got some good advice, I'm sure, from some very smart people. And then I ended up coming back to Mike. And I'm like, Mike, I think I am who I am. Can we just make what I do even more efficient and better than whatever? And by then it was kind of the end of the rope anyway, right? Or end of the road. It was, and so that was kind of 2017. By then, like mid-year, I'm already like calling buddies going, hey, I'd love to talk about what my next career might be, because this is not going to last very long at all. And I started, I always had an interest in real estate, investing. My wife and I did some investing in just some short-term rentals, vacation rentals here, for single-family residential properties here in Scottsdale, which came about from buying a house in 2006. Market crashed around here. 2008, we were moving to a different house, but didn't want to sell that one, so we turned it into a rental. We bought two other rentals, and my wife kind of managed that. I helped out a little bit, and we sold those kind of 2013, 14. And so that was my first introduction to, investing in real estate. And so when I looked at what my next career might be, I looked at a few different options and what would interest me and what I'd like to do. And it was somewhere in the investment world, but probably in the real estate world. And for somebody coming out of golf, that probably connectivity was going to be the best asset that I had kind of at that time, the best skill set. And so with commercial real estate, I figured that was kind of the way to go. And so by 2017, I started kind of investing in some private deals and but kind of like, hey, I'm going to invest a little bit, but I know who you are. I know you well, and I want to learn. And so as you just kind of start trying to consume as much as possible, I went around and talked to anybody and everybody in commercial real estate in this valley, in the Phoenix Valley, and anybody else that I could kind of get in front of that was influential and been successful, and tried to figure out kind of a path. And so, long way around, I invested a lot in private debt, which is like hard money lending, but it's you become the bank for real estate properties, and you just charge a lot more. But that's what I do now. Trident Capital Partners is a real estate private lender. We're based in Scottsdale, and we lend kind of from Texas to California. And I've got two partners. They've been doing it for a long time. And weirdly, one of my first meetings was with one of my now partners. He was at a different firm. I was being introduced by my other partner that was also at a third different firm, and invested in one of their deals, and then just communication and stayed together. And they put together Trident about 2.5 to 3 years ago and asked me to come on board right after they started it. And fortunately as a partner. And so it's great. It's very, very fulfilling. I run the investor relations side, but also, I headed up. We put together a fund, and that was kind of my baby for the spring. And then I've also gotten into just kind of underwriting and helping us kind of close some loans and some deals. So that's what I do. I really enjoy it. Anything that you do that you really like, I've heard it. It's never a job if you really actually like the day-to-day work. I don't like everything that I do, but I really like a lot of what I do, and fortunate to work with some guys that I really admire and enjoy what we do. And when I say that I've felt fulfilled in different areas, it's we've got a growing and successful business right now, and an investment company. We invest private capital, and we've done very well by them and built a nice portfolio, and I feel like I've been a part of that, right? And so to be a part of something successful, be a part of something that you're proud of is very fulfilling, and it's not easy work, but it's been that part of my life has been great. And then you combine that with a good, stable family life, and all family's happy and healthy. I'm about as happy as I can be, and pinch myself as often as I can. I get to have fun and enjoy my family and enjoy the work that I do.
Well, yeah, and it makes sense because from what you guys are doing, you're helping multiple people, right? You're getting a better ROI for your investors, and then you're also helping these other projects get off the ground. It's going to be a fun position to work in the sense that you got both sides of the coin. Everyone can kind of win.
Yeah.
Right?
And actually that's true. It's actually kind of true. It's rare that we're, even when we're kind of quote rescue capital and a bank kind of falls out and we kind of come in to rescue the deal, it's still a deal worth doing for the borrower, the sponsor, the one that we're, helping capitalize the deal. And then for our investors, our job is to never, is to try to never put them in harm's way. And I mean, we invest in our own stuff as well. And so, it should be a win-win for all. Now, different markets create different challenges, and there's going to be do enough deals, and there's going to be some heartache, and that's unfortunately the nature of it. But and that was another side when kind of going to commercial real estate is seeing very clearly that this is a very black and white, financially feasibility, numbers driven, adventure versus residential real estate, which is more emotional, right? The transactions that we help on, it's so somebody can go try to make money, whether the real estate is helping their business or whether just investing in real estate. They're there to make money. We're there to make money. Our investors are there to make money. And the few times that we see deals that everybody can do that, then those are the ones we invest in. But I think the really interesting side for me is just the fun, interesting deal flow that we see. Even the stuff we don't. It's a quick pass, but it's very interesting. We see everything from land to multifamily. We've done a mobile home park. We've done office, industrial. Just all different kinds of properties and deals, and work with people. And it's every day is a little different, which is very interesting and very enjoyable.
Well, I got a couple quick hitters here. We'll get you back to working your normal job. I appreciate the time today. But, all right, comes to mind on this one. Best golf shot you ever hit under pressure. Can be from the amateur days, pro days, just when you needed one, you had it.
I made a putt to tie. It was really to tie for the Palmer Cup. I was just finished my freshman year. And the Palmer Cup, for those that don't know, it's Walker Cup, Ryder Cup, but it's for college. So it's collegiates from the U.S. playing against collegiates from Great Britain and Ireland. And we just happened to be at St. Andrews. I was picked as the eighth and final player on our team, and I made about a 12-footer on the last hole for birdie. My competitor had like a 5-footer. But anyway, so we have the match, retain the cup. But I will never forget that experience, partly just because of where I was, right? But making a kind of a 12-footer that just barely kind of fell in the corner. But that was one of those experiences when you kind of look back a few years later and you're like, did I really do that? That's crazy. That's cool.
Most underrated player when you were on tour that was out there, and I mean it in a positive way, where like people don't realize like how good this player is, just kind of flies under the radar, but you were always impressed with the level of, it could be grinding or talent or all of it. I always think it's an interesting question of like who kind of stands out from that standpoint, kind of who's slightly underappreciated.
So weirdly, my one victory was against Bryony Baird in a playoff. I remember at the time, and he's had a bunch of injuries, and so he hasn't played much since kind of 2011, 12. And obviously the money's gone up. But I remember he made about $15 million in his career without ever winning a tournament. And I was like, that is just an inordinate amount of high-quality golf that is under the radar, right? I always felt like that aspect I was just amazed at when I looked at his career. I won, and I kind of looked back, and I looked at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's made that much money. I'm like, that just means he's played so well so many times, just never quite put it together. And then I felt even worse about stealing one from him. So he'd be one. There's certain guys, Kevin Stadler, and I love. He's a Whisperock member. He thinks he's terrible. Everybody around him always thought he was, is so good. I felt like he was underappreciated. And then all the other guys you've heard about. There's more guys that and I'm not going to go into it. There's more guys that I'm like, that guy's not that good. He thinks he's amazing. He plays pretty good every once in a while. He's got a lot of like name recognition, but like he's really not that good. But the other two are the ones that I, in my mind, I'm like, those guys can just flat out play.
Well, yeah, I think Bryony Beard was out there forever. Like, he might be one of those guys where it's like he played in damn near 500 PGA Tour events or something, right?
Yeah.
Like he was out there just for that alone, right? Like just to play that
true.
much.
That is true.
Like,
yes,
that's so hard. Like he was out there in his mid 40s, still competing. I think, right?
Yeah.
He probably had a 20-year career out there. That's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a kind of I don't want I like the stories of like he's so good and people don't realize like how good he truly is, right? And I agree with you. Like you're out there that long, you're a great player. I don't care if you won or not, you're a great player.
Yeah, and I'm just guessing he had at least like 30, 40 something top tens, like just which is really tough. I mean, if you have 5 in a year, that's there's only like 10 guys on tour that have like 5 top tens in a year. Maybe 10 or 12, and those are all the big names. But yeah, he was one of those for sure.
Dude could golf his ball.
Yeah,
he could golf his ball. 2 or 3 best golf courses you've ever played, and what makes them special from an architecture standpoint?
I mean, some of the ones you would think of. I mean, when somebody goes, "What's your favorite golf course?" I'm like, Pebble Beach, and it's just it's not a fun answer because it's not a different answer. It's one of 2 or 3 you would expect. And I'm like, yeah, but when you walk through the shot value, for my sake, it's not part of the fun is where you are and some of the shots that you're hitting over or near, obviously something beautiful, but it's the unique golf shots that you get when you play that golf course. It's not the beauty or the 7th hole or the picture that you get with your crew that you're with that day. It's the fact that from number 4, 5, 6, a par 5 that's unlike any in the world. And if you built it today, if you haven't played it, you have no idea how massive uphill that second shot is.
It's huge.
From a downhill lie.
Yeah, trying to just lay it up for me was a challenge. Like, oh my God, I gotta get over that hill.
So. And then you go to 7, and then you've got one of the coolest shots in golf is 8, and then 9 and 10 are crazy good, and then you come back around 17, 18. From shot value, it's as good as there is. And then the one that's grown on me, and I'm headed there in a few days to play in a pro scratch is Old Sandwich Golf Club. I mention it because it's kind of on the second or third tier of what people would ever talk about. It's not like nobody's heard of it. It's got some name recognition, but it is just south of Boston. And it's one of the more, and it's got a great feel and club, but from a golf perspective is so good. I don't think there's any water that comes into play on the golf course. I've never even thought about that, but from a golf perspective, you get every shot, you hit every club, and the Wendell switch completely opposite, and you'll still hit every club. You'll just hit every club on a different hole. And I think it's extremely interesting. I think the par fives are interesting. The par threes are interesting. You need to have really good short par fours. I think TPC Sawgrass is underrated. Everybody points to number 17. That's one of my favorite golf courses. I wish that was a golf course I could play on a daily basis, in good condition or whatever. And I think it's because I hate long par fives. They're boring. I hate laying up. I love short holes, short par fours, short par threes, short par fives that are a little quirky or just fun, because there's a chance there's an experience that's going to happen, and that in itself is fun. And I think, when I think of golf courses, and I think of, if we could have a whole thing about golf course architecture, I geek out on that kind of stuff. But to me, the ability to have good short holes is very difficult. And I think the best thing about like a TPC Sawgrass is there's like 4 or 5 short par fours that are so fun, because if you can hit the tee shot in the fairway, it's a birdie hole. If you hit it somewhere other than the fairway, you just hope you don't make 6. And I think it's fantastic, right? It's fun. And then the par fives are fun, and then you got 17, 18. So anyway, those are the ones that kind of stick out. I picked a couple that obviously are kind of cliche a little bit, but I enjoy golf experiences as far as shots and having a chance of that risk reward is fun.
My final one here for you, is there 1 or 2 courses on the list that you haven't played yet that you're going to try to get out there in the next couple of years and experience it?
Shinnecock's probably the top of that list. Never played Shinnecock, never played Marion. And it's been a long time since I've played Augusta. So I think they've changed enough around there that it's like I haven't played it. Those are the top ones on my list. I think Shinnecock might just happen next year. Putting together a trip with some buddies. We were in LA this last year, and I think we've said we're going to do the Long Island thing this next year. And so that would be that's probably the next top of my list that I need to play there.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I really do appreciate it. Best of luck with everything you're doing in the business world. And, it's cool that you're still playing enough golf to enjoy it, and have that be a part of your life as well. So thanks for doing this, Pro. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time and letting me come on.